Hi, everyone. My name is Sheletta Brundidge. I host the Sheletta Show on News Talk 830 WCCO Radio, your good neighbor station. And I am the CEO and founder of ShelettaMakesMeLaugh.com, a podcasting platform for people of color. I am so honored that AARP Minnesota trusted me enough to host tonight's forum, Saving Across Future Generations. My son, Andrew, 15 years old, got his first job at McDonald's and spent every dime of his first paycheck on candy at the Hy-Vee. I thought I was alone in this until I talked to my friend Steve Patterson over at Twin Cities Live, and he said he did the exact same thing on his first job. The entire $450 went on candy. How do we teach our young people to save? Whether you're a senior in high school or a senior citizen, tonight we are going to talk about saving for the future. You know, at some point, we're all going to be at an age, God willing, where we're not going to be able to work anymore. How are we going to be able to survive? Will we have to depend on our children and loved ones, or will we be able to be self-sufficient? Tonight, you'll hear from regular, normal, everyday people, just like you and me. We're going to talk to people who have saved money, who understand finances, and they made it work for themselves and their families. Not a bunch of experts and financial planners and people trying to sell you something. These are my neighbors. These are your neighbors. AARP Minnesota has brought them together, and y'all know they can be trusted. So thank you for joining us to talk about saving across future generations. We have to thank our sponsors for putting this all together. AARP Minnesota, Black Women's Wealth Alliance, Bridge Makers, and Youth Prize. Tonight, we'll hear from thought leaders about generational experiences in saving for the future, including challenges. And you know, sometimes those challenges present opportunities. Look at Elon Musk. While the rest of us are out here trying to figure out how we're going to live because our jobs got cut and we had to dip into our savings due to COVID, he tripled his wealth. Well, you know what? He ain't the only one. I want to get in on some of that, and I know you do too. So we'll explore common solutions that could break down these barriers for all generations. So we start building generational wealth for our family. Now, we got a couple of housekeeping things we got to go over before we get into this thing. Now, we want you to be a part of the conversation too. This is not just us talking to you. We want to hear from you. So whether you are watching us on Facebook or you're on YouTube, go to the comments section. Leave questions for our experts. We will read them live and answer them in real time. So you guys stick around for the entire show because you never know when we're going to ask your questions. And share this, like it. Tell your friends to jump on board before we get started because we don't want anybody to miss anything. So if you're joining the conversation on social media, the hashtag is Jen's Talk Money. Jen's Talk Money is the hashtag that we want you to use. And we're going to be doing some polling. Oh my God, these people at AARP, they got all kind of cool technology I ain't never heard of before. They got a poll called Slido. And they're going to be asking questions and they want you to answer in real time. They're going to put a QR code up on the screen and you can scan it with your smartphone right into your camera. There's a link that pops up. And why? Okay, well, Sheletta, why are we doing this? I thought y'all were going to be talking to me. We were going to be listening. We're going to be taking notes. This is a conversation. And you know what? Let me tell y'all a little history. After finding an older woman living in a chicken coop because she couldn't afford decent housing or health care, retired educator Ethel Percy Andrews got angry, got absolutely teed off. But then she got organized. She went on to found AARP, setting in motion a new vision for aging that included efforts to ensure that all people, regardless of race, creed, or color, could retire with some dignity and some security. So this conversation is really important because all generations deserve to retire with dignity and security, But the barriers facing some of us are often, they feel too far off, too complex to address. So we just don't even deal with them. We don't want to think about them. We got 11 other things going on. But tonight, starting today, we're going to address these barriers, y'all. It's time to break the generational curse of not enough and start building wealth and exploring possible solutions to get there. So we have a great and amazing group of ladies tonight. I tell you, Pahoua Yang Hoffman is off the chain. St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation. She serves as a senior vice president of community impact at the foundation, the largest community foundation in Minnesota. Now, in her role, this is just what they have on paper. She does so much more than this. She serves as the chief strategist for grant making and community impact at the foundation. In addition to that, she manages relationships with organizations, two client foundations, the F.R. Bigelow and the Mardag Foundation. She also assists the foundation in areas of public policy and community engagement. Pahoua, thank you for being here. And Kenya McKnight Ahad, Black Women's Wealth Alliance. She is the founder and CEO, looking so good. Oh my God, I knew I should have put on some more makeup. Let me tell you something. This social enterprise focuses on improving the economic stability and prosperity of historical Black women, career and entrepreneurial professionals. Since 2007, oh my God, I can't believe it's been that long, girl. She has served in key leadership roles across the economic development sector. And this is the thing, she's facilitated lending and technical support to more than 400 micro businesses that would not have been in business if it were not for Miss Kenya. So she led business and legal marketing clinics, and as well as youth enterprise. So building that generational wealth and showing our young people a different way of doing things. Y'all wonder why these young people so sassy? Y'all got Miss Kenya to thank for that. And Marissa Bane, Malta. She is with AARP Public Policy Institute. She is amazing. She is amazing. She's part of the financial security team. That's why she's here tonight. We're gonna learn, talk about how to get the money and how to keep it. It's one thing to get it. Ask Rick James. It's a whole nother thing to keep it. Okay. She works on a range of issues that impact the financial security of older Americans and future generations. In her past role, Kenya sat on the global thought leadership and international teams at AARP, and Marissa also created and is currently the chair of Millennial Employee Resource Group at AARP, where she leads efforts to focus on the millennial cohort. And Marissa also was appointed by the CEO, the head person in charge of AARP, as a council member to the inaugural Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Council at AARP. So Marissa, I'm so glad you are here with us tonight. Oh my God, this is amazing. And I'm just excited about Miss Jazinae Patterson with Black Women's Wealth Alliance, because when my daughter Cameron grows up, I want her to be just like Miss Jazinae. She is a business advisor for the Black Women's Wealth Alliance. She attended Washburn Senior High School in Minneapolis. She's one of our own. And when she graduated in 2016, she enrolled at University of Northwestern St. Paul. She degrees in criminal justice, psychology, and biblical studies, so she could pray for you and then get you out of jail. Is that amazing or what? And she is currently studying to get certified as an economic development professional. In addition to her role as a business advisor for Black Women's Wealth Alliance, she also works with the No Kids in Prison Fellowship with the Legal Rights Center. So we have an amazing panel of, oh my God, I can't believe it's not but a women tonight. And we are going to start talking about this and getting into it. And ladies, let's just dive right in. To get us started, we have asked attendees to think about a generation other than their own and why they don't save, why people don't have money in their savings accounts. You know, I ain't gonna lie. For a while, I was stuck at $375.18, and I'm a grown woman and I got 4 kids. I need to do better, right? But I like the panelists' reaction to some of the comments. We had over 100 people who submitted comments before the meeting who took the survey. My C, she was one of the people, and this question really got me. Kenya, I want you to speak to this. My C says they have low paying jobs and don't have spare income. That's why she can't say. Can you speak on that, Kenya?
As it being true, or
Just why do you think? I mean, that's what they're saying. The reason that they can't save. 100 people submitted questions, and they wanted, we wanted their thoughts before the meeting, and they wanted to ask the panelists some of the comments, and people, why people don't save, why they don't have money, and one of the things they're saying is because of low-paying jobs, and they don't have the spare income. Some people think you got to have spare income to save.
Yeah, and I think that, it just isn't true. Now, you may not be able to save at the level and rate that you want to, but it's about adapting a wealth mindset, right? And in that, there are rules, and paying yourself first is one, and that's first and foremost. And so you have to give yourself an allowance or a salary, something that you take off every paycheck. And you also have to, figure out what are you saving for, right? And even if you put 5 cents or $1 towards that every check, you're starting, and it's about starting, right? From where you are. So is it that you can't save, or you can't save at the amount that you think you should, right? Which is a higher goal than where you really are. So, I mean, even if it's saving 5 pennies, every paycheck, you have to start somewhere. So I think that it is doable. It's just about, are you doing it within your means? One, right? And then how often? Is this every check, or every 2 weeks, or once a month? But then also, most importantly, what are you saving for? What is it going towards? That's most important.
We have a note from Susan. She shared this comment. Boomers went through 3 bad downturns of the stock market. It is hard for many to rebuild. Pahoua, I know you deal across generations. When you think about boomers in the stock market and what they went through, I was in Houston, Texas when people worked for 40 years at Enron, and they had enough to retire and live well one day, and the next day they didn't have enough money to buy a jar of pickles. So, how do they start rebuilding when they feel like, I've done this 3 times?
Yeah.
Never mind. Don't even worry about it.
It's hard. It's difficult. And it's a real thing, and it's impacting many of our baby boomers and older adult workers who, this is why they continue to stay in the workforce, right? Because the stock market or other investments that they've made was affected by environmental conditions in the market. And so this is why they've had to stay in the workforce, and which is also contributing to some of the gap in childcare that we're seeing. My mom is working. If she wasn't working, she'd probably be taking care of my sister's kids, but she's not able to do that. Now my sisters have to worry about childcare. And so it's a cascading effect. It doesn't just affect them, but it affects everybody around them. So, and they may be not at their peak earning right now, too, which is hard to build that back when you've lost it.
Yeah, and it's scary. We heard from Bruce. He says it may take all one's resources to simply live from day to day. Marissa, I know when you hear that, it touches your heart, because this is what you do day in and day out. And people are looking at this, and they're listening to us, and they're saying, Marissa and Sheletta don't get it. I can barely afford to keep my lights on. I'm applying for energy assistance. I'm searching for the cheapest gas. How can they expect me to save? Like Bruce says, if it takes every single dime that I have just to live from day to day.
Right. Exactly. It's something we work on every day at AARP. And I think a solid fact to all of these comments and questions is that income has not kept pace with the cost of living and expenses every year. Those are, inflation is moving a much faster rate than our income. So that's something that every generation is feeling at this moment. And especially when debt becomes a large conversation for both generations, right? Whether that be student loan debt, which impacts a large chunk of younger generations, but it's also affecting older generations who, in addition to student debt, whether it be their own or a family members, are dealing with mortgage or auto or credit card debt. And so that debt burden has been increasingly more and more over the years. And with this higher debt burden comes an impact for the future generation. So this conversation is very important in addressing that, income hasn't kept with our expenses, and how do we deal with that? And I know we'll touch on it tonight.
Now, Jazinae, we're going to have to put a pin right there and talk to you because, your generation is strapped with that student loan debt. My grandmother didn't have student loan debt because she didn't go to college. My mama didn't have student loan debt because she got a Pell Grant. Those resources that were available for first generation college students are not necessarily so readily available for your generation. So, Jazinae, when we start talking about those student loan debts, how has your generation been impacted by that?
I know for a fact my generation has been hit really hard by it. I have a lot of friends right now that's one of the main struggles that they talk about is paying back their student loan debt. I had a lot of friends who had to move back in with their parents and stuff in order to even start trying to pay those loans back. A lot of them were saying that they had like monthly payments of like $400 or $500 for it. In that, I can just say that I was extremely fortunate because I had a full ride scholarship for all 4 years. So I haven't even had to think about the idea of student loan debt. But to see the struggle and the things that they've been through and how it's kind of set them back, I don't know. It's hard to watch, but at the same time, you can see their perseverance and like they're figuring it out and trying to find ways to get through. So.
Yeah. Now, Toby has a note that he sent us. He said it's hard to save in this economy when there are so many expenses. Pahoua, our parents and grandparents did not have the cable and cell phone bills that we have.
No.
They did not have the streaming expenses to entertain our kids. Otherwise, we have to raise them, right? And I really want to raise my kids. I would rather Ryan's World and that girl Lele entertain them while I do some dishes or do this form and talk to y'all. So those are expenses that they did not have. And here we are with all of these extra now essential, that would long time ago, a lot of homes didn't even have phones, right? They were still writing letters. And it wasn't that long ago. And now not only do we have the home phone, we got the cell phone, we got the cable bill, we got the streaming service, all this ancillary stuff that is now necessary. And like Marissa said, our paychecks have not kept pace with our expenses.
Why are you giving me all the hard ones?
I'm sorry, girl.
I will just say, I think that you're absolutely right. And this contributor is absolutely right. We have more expenses than our parents had. So there's more of them and they cost more, right? Mm-hmm. So when I think about how much it costs to buy a car now, there's a reason why I still drive a used car. It's just new cars are so much more expensive than they used to be. Rent is so much more than it used to be, right? So everything costs more. So not only are there newer expenses that our parents didn't have that they didn't have, but we have them. And Sheletta, you're absolutely right. They're essential. So what we learned, like especially last year during the pandemic, while school was still in session, it wasn't enough just to have a connection. We had to have a high-speed connection, right, mm-hmm. in order to participate fully in classrooms. We know that too, for some of us who work from home still and trying to connect into the office. That is an essential. It used to be a nice thing to have, right? And now it's required. And so all of these things really contribute to people, I think, not being able to save in the way that they want to.
I see you shaking your head, Kenya. I know you got something to contribute.
I mean, no, yeah, I think the cost of, we live in a more modernized world, right? And, we have to pay for more things. We have more people, larger populations. So there's, we eat more, I think, in this country than any other country. And so our excessive consumption is driving also the cost of living. And so there's checks and balances. I don't know. I mean, I understand. I come from a situation where, it wasn't even a discussion or understanding of any sort of a financial literacy. We got put out a lot for this rent one paid. It just wasn't a priority or thought process in my household. So I know for me, though, I tend to look at the world through the eyes of, you can accept it or allow the world to engage you, and then it'll be a whirlwind, or you can decide how you show up and figure out what your bottom lines and focus is, and put some checks and balances on your plate in your and in front of you. And there's always a way to get through to the other side, but it's about the vision you have and the steps you take to drive it. And I think anybody can do that, but it doesn't happen the same way because we all coming from different places. So there's a lot of factors, of course, especially with the younger populations. We didn't grow up with social media in the way they do. So they have a lot more coming at them to drive expenses and a lot of things we have to consider. But I think there are tools. We take breaths and take a step back and think about, are you engaging the world as it is compelling you to, or from your own means and position in life? Because you don't have to engage everything that's there that increases your cost of living. So that's what's at heart for me. But I know it isn't that simple for everyone.
Yeah, we have something called a Slido poll. These people at AARP are amazing. And we also want to hear from you joining us on YouTube and Facebook. What is the biggest barrier you face saving for the future? Now, let me tell you, you can participate in this poll by scanning the QR code on the screen with your smartphone camera, and it's going to take you to a link that pops up. And just give us 2 or 3 words, whether you are taking the Slido poll. If you don't have the ability to do that, talk to us on YouTube and Facebook. Again, this is an interactive forum. We are going to be talking to you in real time, and we want to hear from you. Give us 2 or 3 words and tell us what prevents you from saving for the future. And we're going to be talking about that. Pahoua. They all in your business. Family caregiving expenses. Girl, we talked about this.
We talked about that. Yeah.
The best part is that we should have had a before party and an after party. Because we talk about, the caregiving and Pahoua, a lot of times we get caught up in our family's financial situation and can't take care of our own. Talk about that.
So let me just tell you that I come from, so I'm a Gen Xer, but within that, I also identify with the 1.5 generation. And what I mean by 1.5 generation is I talk about that through an immigrant lens. So I came here as a child, immigrant parents. So 1.5 generation are those children who came over from a different country here in America, and we're the bridge. We weren't born here, but we had immigrant parents, and we were also the translator, the kids who learned English faster than our parents. And so we lived in 2 worlds. And I think when you have that experience, and maybe others who don't have the same immigrant experience can also identify with this, you have that experience of immediately taking care of your parents. And that continues to be true for me. And so I am my mother's caregiver. And so I have this, and I feel this responsibility, right? To not only make sure that I have what I need. And I love Kenya's comment earlier about paying yourself as well, because you can get consumed by the responsibility that one has and making sure that everyone else is fed and maybe not taking care of yourself. And so I have that experience. And so I used to carry around as a burden, and I realize now that caregiving is an act of love. But an act of love means that you've also got to self-care, right? You've got to think about yourself as well. And so being a caregiver, it can't be at your own detriment. So I want to make sure that my mother has what she needs, but that may also mean it's not me always paying for what she needs, but making sure that she gets access to resources that she might need. And I might just need to be that conduit, that guide, that navigator. But caregiving is huge. And for Gen Xers, we feel this in multiple ways. We're caregiving for children, and we're also caregiving for our parents. And so we feel that almost 360.
All right, Marissa, we got to talk about this. The big one, the one that everybody's talking about. That's why it's highlighted and larger than all the other words. Education. Whether you are paying for childcare, whether you are paying for private school education, or you are paying for college or student loan debt, education is what everybody is talking about. Break that down, Marissa.
Yep. I mean, here at AARP, we discuss this because we talk about the life cycle, and you want to be in a constant state of learning, right? But when that barrier to entry costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's not always the easiest. And so there's a lot of discussion happening, right, at all levels, and you see a lot of media thrown at you, and it can be overwhelming. And so to break it down, it's really important to focus on why you yourself or family member want to go to education. Have that conversation earlier rather than later, talking with a financial advisor or planner for yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren. These are all really important when it comes to education, and understanding that education is a tool that we use to better ourselves and better our lives, and that everyone should have access to it, and it should not come with a very scary dollar sign around it.
All right, Kenya, there's one with your name on it, discipline. You talked about this. Pay yourself first. It's all about choices. That's another one that's up there. I think discipline and choices go hand in hand.
Yeah, and it's not a blame thing, right? It's, we're all coming from different spaces, and it takes a while to get a handle on it. But I think having a bottom line really matters. Most of all, having a vision of what you're after. But you do have to understand the difference between your operational expenses, the things that you need to pay for to live. Right. So there's a need to have a budget, I guess, is where we're going with this. And which is sort of a blueprint for your spending, to help you understand kind of where and you're using your money, where you need to use it, where you want to use it, and also kind of the future. So there's different categories you need to have, and let that be your guide. I think it isn't just about managing life where you are, but you do need to have an understanding of what does it take to maintain the lifestyle you currently live. You decide whether you want to scale up or down. That's your choice. But you have to understand it and know what that bottom line number is you need to bring in every month to take care of that lifestyle that you have. And anything outside of that, you can use that for your savings, right? For different things you want to do. If that's vacation, if that's, school or the house, or, whatever those things are. Birthdays, you should budget everything. Because we also have this open emotional spending that happens during holiday seasons. There's a lot. So you can see a budget as a guardrail for yourself that may change based on your lifestyle or household size. But whether you live alone or with someone, you need a budget for your life as part of your blueprint or guardrail to help direct how you use your resource and how you manage them. So that's what I think.
Now, Jazinae, one of the things they're talking about is rent. When I got out of college, my rent was $450. I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a little covered garage, and I thought I had it going on.
Wow.
That'll get you a crack house right now, and there's 2 other people living in it. Let's talk about rent, Jazinae. What is your generation looking at when they come out of college and they're going out there and looking to rent their first apartment?
Yeah, that's actually something that I struggled with in the beginning. I ended up staying with my auntie and then a friend for a while. And I'm in my first apartment right now on my own out of college, and I currently pay over $1,300 a month. So yeah, the cost of rent is really high and it's really expensive. So yeah, I would say that's probably one of the most challenging things. I know all my friends, for the most part, when they first graduated, they all had to move back in with their parents. Like we all were pretty much in the same situation, or they ended up being roommates with someone until they could be able to afford to live on their own.
Now, how do you save with that? I mean, you coming out of college and you got that coming out of college salary, but you got a grown woman's mortgage. You only pay $200 or $300 less than I pay for a house in Cottage Grove. So how are you with that young woman's salary? I just got out of college and this may be my first or second job. How do you start putting something away when your rent is $1,300 a month?
Yeah, it really comes down to exactly what Kenya was talking about. It comes down to discipline. You got to be really, really disciplined. And like you said, even if it starts out with like 5 cents a month or every 2 weeks, however that looks for you. I know for me, I was also serving at the time. So I had the choice of either doing direct deposit for my checks or to just get physical checks. And I actually told them I want physical checks because I know I wouldn't spend those. So what I would do is get the physical checks and save those. And then my tips, that would be my spending money. So you work harder and different for your tips when you know, like, this is all I got for the month. So I got to make this much because I'm saving all my checks. And then when it came to my checks from my full-time job, I would always split half and put half away. And then the other half that would go towards like bills and stuff. And this was before I even got the apartment. So I had a lot saved up before going into getting my apartment.
Now, Marissa, Kenya's talking about making a budget. I know that until I got married and met my husband, who was very astute financially, I had never seen a budget. I don't know what that looks like. If we made $800, we spent $799.99, and we worked to get to the next check because we just always thought we were gonna have that job. So, what does it even look like for people who are not financially literate when they start thinking about, okay, can you set a budget? She's right. I need to put one together, but how do I get started?
Right. I mean, that's something I struggled with when I came out of college and graduate school as well, right? I had all this training, this background and everything, but to apply it to my own life and self was difficult. It wasn't something, I had studied for so long, and then to do it myself was a crazy idea and concept for me for some reason. And it took a lot of practice and discipline, and you might, not always be able to figure it out right away. It is a learning process, and every person's life is different, and the things that you are paying for, we talked about caregiving. That's a huge thing that is impacting millennials and Gen X and Z and Y and all the letters right now, right? And so it's super important that we focus on having the conversation early. I was in the FBLA, the financial business group in high school, right? I set up myself with a 401k early on, or, a 401k auto IRA, all these things, right? Working on those initiatives from an early age and having those conversations. And it's never too late to have the conversation. It's always important, whether you're learning it at 20 or 30 or 60 or 80, to make sure that those around you understand what financial impacts can have on yourself in the future and down the road.
Now, I want to remind the folks who are watching us and listening in, we are not having a conversation just with ourselves. We want to have a conversation with you too. So if you are watching on Facebook, if you are watching us on YouTube, throw out the questions because the experts are here. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your challenges. We also want to hear about your celebrations. If there are things that work for you financially that you've been passing along to your friends that are working for them, tell us about it. We want to talk about challenges as well as solutions and opportunities for growth in real time. Put it in the comment section on YouTube. Put it in the comment section on Facebook. And we're going to be mentioning and talking about your questions, shouting out your name and your city. And we want you to know that this is interactive. We're all interconnected tonight, and we are having a conversation. Change begins with a conversation, and that conversation starts right here and right now. Now, we do have some folks who are already asking questions, and I'm going to throw this out there to you, Pahoua, because I want to know what you think of this. Here's a question. It says, we often think of boomers and younger generations like millennials and Gen Z as being in completely different situations when it comes to finances. What are some points you see of commonality, though, across the generations that we should consider when we start thinking about financial security? What thing binds all these generations together? Because we're talking to everybody tonight. This is AARP, but we've got senior citizens and seniors in high school watching this. So what kind of binds all of them together when we start talking about finances and financial security?
Let me try this. I think that no matter where you are in whatever generation, I think for some reason we have a very difficult time talking about money. So I think that's one. So I know a family friend was really stressing out, and when we learned that it was because she just needed someone to talk about her finances, to kind of put it all on the table. Where's my money coming from? Where's it going? Do I understand how I'm spending my money? And I think that no matter which generation you belong to, I think that in every generation, there is some discomfort about talking about money and finances. And whether that is your own literacy, or whether it's feeling like you don't have enough, or it's feeling like you don't have a good control over it, management of it. Maybe you have more responsibilities than others, and there's a shame in that, or a concern over whether you really want to talk about those things with people. I think that is the thing we need to get past. So we need to talk about it. And I know that I'm still figuring it out too. I'm not Kenya, but I know that the day I put everything on the table, like, okay, what are all my expenses? And when I did that with my mom, there was such relief for both of us, right? So we knew together what the situation was and how we were going to put together a plan, and how we were going to move forward in a way that felt good for her, in a way that I understood so I could support her. So I think that that's something that's shared across the generation. I would also say all of us feel like we don't have enough. So no matter what generation you belong to, I think that there is a feeling like we just either can't catch up, or we're not where we want to be. So that I'll say those two things, and maybe the others can jump in.
Kenya, I want to ask you this, because Pahoua brought up a good point. Is there shame? Why is there so much shame around talking about finances? Are we embarrassed because we don't feel like we're where we should be, or we don't have as much as we think our neighbors have? Are we looking on Facebook and seeing what other folks are doing and saying, you know what, I'm not even going to count my little nickels because they don't mean a hill of beans, because my friend Stephen Carter just took his wife to Greece, and I'm just trying to get to Texas to see my mama.
Yeah, I have to talk about the racial equity lens in this. This, can't be this broad stroke. I mean, I know now it seems that way because of the times we're in, but let's just be honest. This isn't necessarily true across every single person. And certainly when we take a broader look at the composition of the racial structures and groups, this is not true for the majority of Europeans. And so I think, in fact, African Americans, there's a 98-year gap, wealth gap between Black and white people. And so that is not just about financial literacy, it's about assets. We're talking about savings, and Black women are projected to retire in poverty at the highest rate than all folks, but yet has the longest track record of workforce amongst all women. And so I think, along with the highest percentage of being the primary breadwinner of our household in Minnesota and across the country, which is not a badge of honor, it's a badge of responsibility. So I don't want to broad stroke this. And, let's be very real here about the fact that it looks different across our communities. And some of us come from a place of extreme systematic historical deficit economically and financially that doesn't allow us to build on the same platform. That's what we do, the work we do for, right? Mm-hmm. And so I can't talk like this is true for every white woman or Asian or Hispanic, or, we all have different things culturally and individually. So I can say that for the women I represent, that it's not necessarily embarrassment more than it's pride. It's more of, most folks aspire to want to build and leave things for their children. They don't always know how to access it. They don't have the information, the knowledge, or the tools necessary to build generational wealth. It's probably simple things that we can do, which is why I lean on strategies, information, knowledge, because at the same time, in the African American community, we have a very high percentage of consumerism, right? So other people are definitely extracting our money to build their wealth. We're not. Yeah. So it is about, being, participants in the economy, but through an intentional, conscious strategy where we're also retaining some of the resources. So it's not for all of us so much of what we don't have, more than how we use what we have to build the things we want. If you don't have a vision and know what you after, then you're just spinning. And so I think for me, I have to lean there. When you look at the numbers, if I deal with the emotions and how people are being swamped up in this heavy marketing that this United States does to get these consumers, then I'm going to go all across the board. But if we deal with the reality that these corporations are not just getting money out not even just corporations, but all these wealthy people, money ain't just flying out the air. They're getting it from people like us on the ground. So we've got to be intentional about, kind of where we are and how we move through this with a vision and a set of tools. And so that's what I can contribute to that part of this discussion.
Now, we are getting so many questions on YouTube and Facebook. Keep them coming. We want to hear from you, and we are going to talk directly to you. Kathy sent us a comment on YouTube. She is watching live. Thanks for joining us, Kathy. She wants to talk about taking advantage of workplace savings program. Marissa, you'd be a good one for this because it's your area of research at AARP.
Yes, thank you. Kathy's exactly spot on, right? We have moved away from what our grandparents, potentially parents, used to get, right, which was defined contributions. And what do I mean by that? Pensions, right? Not many of us, if any of us, have a pension anymore. But one of the things now that's really hitting a lot of us at home is that almost half of Americans don't have access to a retirement savings plan through their employers. And this means that, they're spending that money. They're not putting it away. I saw a comment in there about, putting that money off to the side into a 401k account, into whatever your employer offers. But when your employer doesn't offer it, what are you supposed to do? And at AARP, we have an initiative called Work and Save. And, we've done a host of studies and panels where Americans are 15 times more likely to save when they can do it at work. And the Work and Save initiatives that I've done and worked with our advocacy and our policy team is to really uphold this at the state levels and work on this to make sure that it's easier for workers at small employers to do this. Not everyone can afford to give their employers a 401k account, but there needs to be other options. And these Work and Save initiatives that we do could allow for that to happen.
Now, we got another comment on YouTube from Matt. Thank you so much for watching, Matt, and participating and engaging. It's nice to have a guy in here. Matt's our first guy. He's our guy tonight. Hey, Matt. Matt says we should make sure that all students leave high school with key financial skills, like knowing how to create a household budget. Jazinae, when you were in high school, did you have these classes? Were they made available to you?
No. That was actually something I remember we talked about a lot my junior and senior year of high school. We were really frustrated because they were still making us take like geometry and algebra courses. And still I haven't used A squared plus B squared at all. But just wanting to have those financial courses where we actually learned about credit and the importance of it and how to build credit and what that even looks like. how to make a budget, what that looks like, interest rates, like all that kind of stuff. But no, none of that was offered in high school. And I think it's something that's really important, and it probably should be required in high school instead of geometry and algebra all 4 years.
Yeah, we got another question from YouTube. I want to hear from my Facebook family. Facebook family, don't let these YouTube people make y'all shame. Leave us some comments. Kate on YouTube has a question. She says, a big part of my generation's wealth comes from home ownership. But today it is so hard to get into the market, housing costs, but also systematic barriers. How can we overcome that, Pahoua?
This goes back to how everything is so expensive. And right now it's a competitive and hot job market, right? It is hard to get in, and it's hard to access the capital that you might need in order to put in the offer that might be taken on a home. And I don't know that I have a good answer to this, but I do know that, generational wealth does come from homes, home ownership. And maybe what I'll say is, how do we help those who own property now? How do we help them pay down their debt so that they can help others in their families? That's what I'm trying to do with folks in my life. But I think accessing the hot housing market right now is really difficult. I don't know if Kenya is a better one to answer this, but it is really difficult right now.
I mean, there are a lot of different, home ownership models out here, cooperative housing, land trusts, which, isn't the greatest wealth building tool, but it does allow for something. But, I think we just have to get back to the basics of living cooperatively, collectively as people to help each other navigate these times. And that's also true for the housing, and thinking about, buying, duplexes, or building, buying vacant land to build tiny houses, or, container, there's all sorts of models out here, but, it's definitely a strategy, and it's not easy to navigate it, but someone can. And I think for me, what's always also important in this is to not only look at what you can do, but like to build wealth for yourself now, if that isn't seemingly as possible in the way that you envision. But it is about the future, right? Because wealth is also the long-term game. It isn't the here and now. So if it's about the now, then wealth isn't what you're thinking. It's the long-term game about the future, generations of your family. So how do we do what we can in this time to set up a future for those coming after us, or those who are on this multi-generational landscape with us? And I'm an employer of 8 people, and in that, it is my job to make sure that I don't miss a paycheck. Their check is critical to the stability of them being able to pay their bills. And even if they work 20 hours, and I know, or 30 hours, and it's still my job to figure out how to get them 40. That's a value statement for me as an employer. I can offer medical and dental benefits that I'm not even charging them for. I'm figuring out how to cover these expenses fully as part of how I support their quality of life and their ability to make choices about sustaining that or growing it, but not to demote it. And so as an employer, I have to be very thoughtful, so that increases my hustle and game and focus about how I leverage opportunities to ensure that they have what they need holistically, even time off, right? To ensure they can take care of themselves. And so, and now I'm looking at how to incorporate other tools, insurance, life insurance, short and long-term disability, 401k. And as an entrepreneur, I have an IRA. So there's the concept of wealth, understanding it is important. And then the tools to build wealth and the strategies we use to maintain and grow it is key. And you can get this from your banks, so many other sources out here that allows you to start from where you are But it's about having good people you connect with who are not focused on greed and want to charge you $60 a month for a $10,000 life insurance policy that doesn't even cover your debt of death. When the idea of a life insurance policy is not about just covering the expenses of your funeral, but about helping to leave something for your family.
Okay, stop right there. I learned that at 45 years old. I always thought
Sorry,
that.
I was just going.
No, I wanted to stop right there because I think what you're saying there is so important. I always thought life insurance was to cover the cost of your funeral. And I remember there was a man named Mr. Williams who would come and collect money from these single women in the projects every week. And they would give him $30, $20, $15, or whatever. My grandmother did that before I was born, and then up until she died. And when we went to Golden State Mutual to get that policy, it was worth $5,000.
Yeah.
And that's when my ex-husband told me life insurance is not to pay for a funeral. It is to take care of the family that you leave behind. It's about building generational wealth so that your family is not strung into poverty, and you're not setting up a GoFundMe and then taking the GoFundMe money to bury your loved one so they can have a gold line casket. You got to talk to us about life insurance because that could bring us out.
Well, this is why we focus on wealth education opposed to financial literacy, right? There's a difference. And I think financial literacy is a part of wealth education, but we have to talk about what's the concept of wealth and what are the tools that are really used to build it. And these are things that most more affluent communities are privy to, right? They understand the insurance benefit and game, and they invest and they have multiple policies. We're on the average paying $50, $60 a month for a $10,000, $12,000 benefit, policy. And so it's about the education. It's about connecting to the right sources also to get these tools, because if you're dealing with some people, not everybody, independent brokers on the ground, they're hustling. It's about how many they can get. They're not focused on you building wealth. They're focused on you having a policy, right? And so the education is critical. One, and I think knowing the strategies also is critically important. I'm a former federal debt collector also. I've watched a lot of parents and grandparents put student loans in their name, and they die with the debt as a strategy to make sure their young people can go to school debt free. And we're encouraging our children to get the debt. So as I said, it's a wealth strategy. They figured, look, I'm old enough. I'm okay with managing the debt. We want to make sure these generations get through free. So we're going to take on the burden of that response. So these strategies are important. And typically in our community, the Black community, our children are more independent. They make more decisions. They're living life on their own in different ways. And these are the things they're getting into. And the question becomes where and how we engage in their understanding of what they're doing, but also in helping to alleviate the debt and burdens, because right now Black women carry the largest percentage of student loan debt, which is tied to our inability to build assets. And so we've got to talk more about this, not just in school, but at home. Are they sitting down with you as you discuss the bills, right? Do they know what the bills are? Your budget is. If you don't have it, it's not about, staying in that shame of, it's about teaching real life to them in real time. They need to know that there's a cost. Every little hot Cheeto you want costs me some money or whatever that is. And I think the more we can bring reality to our youth in the now, about their social media, the apps, all this, teaching them, not just protecting them from the harm of all the predators and folks, but they're also financial predators with marketing and things that they use to lure them in. How are we teaching them about financial consciousness from their households every day, right now in real time? Children should have a budget. We used to be able to have to work for allowance, things like that, where it had us thinking about, hey, I got $5 at the end of the week. I'm going to spend it on X, Y, and Z. Now, I don't know if those practices are common. So again, it's going back to the basics, challenging them, teaching them, making them earn things, building their way up to being able to think about how they're going to spend money what is going to be spent on and how the thing that they actually buy will last and not be gone in 10 seconds.
Right. We got this question from YouTube. Miss Patsy is joining us. Thank you so much, Patsy. She wants to know, what are some recommendations and solutions for individuals to save when they work for small employers, for-profit and nonprofit, where employee saving options are not available? Now, Jazinae, you were hustling. You were doing a whole lot of saving and moving money around. So I'm going to ask you to help Miss Patsy with this question. What are some recommendations and solutions for saving when you work for a small employer?
Like I was saying before, like it's definitely the discipline aspect, but also I don't remember who exactly said it, but really sitting down and taking the time to look at what your expenses are. The budget is extremely important. You should know where exactly you're putting your money. And then like Kenya said, like you get to choose whether you want to downscale or not. Like you get to choose, because I mean, you really shouldn't. I think a lot of time people think, well, when I put a budget together, there's just all these things that I just absolutely have to take out in order to save. And it's like, maybe you don't have to do that. You can have the budget according to how you want to live your life. So, I mean, I don't really know if that's too helpful, but that's definitely what I've done.
Let's have Marissa chime in on this because of the work you do at AARP. When those smaller employers do not have an employee savings option, it is not available. But they are looking for a way and some help and some assistance to get this done. And I know you've specifically done work, and there's legislation, and you got the Save at Work program. Talk to us about that.
Yep. I saw Matt's comment about this as well. So, I mean, at the state level, AARP advocates for the Work and Save programs, which allows small employers to provide their employees with this opportunity. And it's really important that we focus on this at the state level, not just the federal. Like Matt said, sometimes DC, you hear a lot about that, but you want to know what's happening on your own. The other thing too is to what Kenya was talking about. What are those tools that we have? You have the power to go and find the accounts and the savings mechanisms. Hosts of tools on AARP.com that have that. But the Work and Save program is something we are really initiating and want to keep the conversation going at the state levels.
Now, we all know COVID-19 has changed everything. We have lost loved ones. We have lost friends. We have lost jobs. We have lost our retirement, our savings. How has this pandemic changed how people think about or plan for their financial future? Pahoua, what lessons do you think we will take moving forward that we would have never learned had COVID not come on the scene?
Besides, life is short. So thinking about all those who lost some loved ones during the last 2 years, I would say what I learned through last year and this year is stuff that I could live without. So when restaurants were closed for a time and coffee shops were closed for a time, and I could work in the same clothes for 4 days out of the week, I think it taught me there were things that I didn't need to spend money on that I chose to spend money on, and it elevated for me what were priorities for me. And so those are things I'm continuing to do today, cutting back on some of those expenses. I think sometimes we think about where the money's coming from, but we have a lot of control about what we spend our money on. And so there are things that I do now. I make coffee at home, or I shop differently, or I buy things that I buy groceries differently, so I don't eat out as much, because there was a time where I couldn't. And so those things I want to keep in my practice now moving forward. And it's helped me save some money. And I think that once you see those savings, you want to continue doing that. And I think that I'm hearing that from several of my friends and people I know, that there were things that it was just a routine. You know, we would stop at the place on the corner before we go to work, or I mean, I'm afraid to add up all the lunches I went out when I was working at the office and how much I was able to save money eating from home, right? So those are the kinds of things that I think I want to keep with me.
I keep getting questions on YouTube about Social Security, Kenya. It is on everybody's mind. Aaron is concerned. Thank you, Aaron, for opening up and being transparent and honest as we have this honest conversation about finances with our partners at AARP Minnesota. Aaron says, I worry about Social Security. My parents' Social Security is not enough to cover their living expenses. My dad is a laborer. He physically can't keep working. Miss Kenya, she wants to know, will there be enough for me?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out for myself as a Gen Xer. I think one thing is fundamentally true is that, understanding the structure in some ways of this country is that it's never been about the now. We pay forward. And that's part of why we pay into Social Security to help the generations, before us who've also put in the work to create the pathways and opportunities. And so it's an investment in our collective future as a country. And we may not necessarily be the direct beneficiaries of it. So I'd encourage us, definitely we want something out of it because we're putting in, but understand that when we're talking about our system-wide investments like that, it is about the collective more so. And the goal is for something to be there for you. And in the case that is not, the idea is to develop or to invest in other tools to help provide certain securities for yourself, such as IRA accounts, whether it's Roth or not, such as short and long-term disability in the case that you're hurt on the job, such as really developing as many income streams as possible for the ones who are able, younger. And so it's a question, but I think our whole system needs to be innovated with futuristic, thoughtful, more considered and collaborative leaders who will ensure that. But know that somebody might take a hit here and there because we've had a lot of irresponsible people managing our collective money as a country. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that, straight, but I think that we can look at what we can do now for the future to ensure as much as possible for you, me, those that are coming after us. But for now, we know the investment is for the boomers, the traditionalists, the folks who've paved the way for education, opportunity, and much of what we're dealing with today. So that's really my thought on that.
Let's talk about investments. Jazinae, how does your generation talk about and think about investments?
I know I've had a lot of conversations with my friends about like investing in cryptocurrency. So now you hear about like Dogecoin and Bitcoin and all those kind of cryptocurrency platforms. And then I know like I have a lot of friends who are also on Robinhood. So we'll talk about like all these different stocks and like how to trade with stocks and stuff in terms of like investment. So I'd say that's more so what I've heard like from my generation and us playing in, especially because even on Cash App, I don't know if any of you guys know or if you've even noticed, you can even invest some of the money that you get on Cash App in Bitcoin. And I've seen how that's even flipped and stuff for me as well. So I would say that's more so we've talked about instead of like policies and stuff.
Now, we're going to go back to policy, Marissa. Now, you knew I was coming back to you, girl. I was going to give you some time to think about it. Are there policy solutions right now to ensure that Social Security is around for future generations? Because I'm going to tell you, our YouTube page right now with AARP is lighting up from people, and their concern is about Social Security long term. Kathy, Matt has another question. Everybody wants to talk about Social Security.
Exactly. It is a hot button issue and topic, and I'm proud to say as a millennial, I do believe that it will be there. I think sometimes there's a lot of misconstrued information about Social Security. Even what is it, right? It's a pay-as-you-go system. Like Kenya said, it's we pay whoever is in the workforce right now for the current retired population. Now, recently we heard the number, in the year 2030, 2034 is when Social Security will quote unquote run out. And that's simply, not true. The reason this number and this date approaches is because the retired population is growing faster than the current workforce population. And what can we do to ensure that there is no, a difference in this imbalance we feel? If things go unchanged, it's not going to be 100% funded for those accounts. It would be about 3/4 or 78% funded, which doesn't sound great because you would like to pay out what you put into the system. And all of those things mean that Congress needs to step in. It's most likely that Congress will step in. Sometimes we all turn our eyes to Congress and wonder if they will actually make the moves. But this means that we have to instill and get behind Social Security solvency. And even though it's uncertain what that implementation will look like, what solvency will be, it's likely that reforms will impact people of or at near retirement, rather than just us in the younger population. So we need to make sure that we're repeatedly working at all levels, at all generations, to make sure that solvency for Social Security is there. And when I think about Social Security, my grandmother had and was on Social Security for 60 years of her life, right? It was never meant to be that one and only pocket of money for living off of on older age. And so we have to, like Kenya said, and everyone else here tonight, focus on other ways of adding to that collective bucket for ourselves and for our future generations.
Now, we have had a very frank, very open, very candid discussion. People have opened up to us in ways that I didn't expect them to. And y'all done found out about my mama and grandmama's business, and they probably watching. So I'm gonna get in trouble when I get off of here. My phone is dinging right now because I talked about Mr. Williams and Golden State and that $5,000 life insurance policy that she paid on for 60 years. But we are going to take another Slido poll, and I'm going to ask the panelists as well. What did you hear tonight that surprised you the most? Take your cell phone camera, click on the QR code. A link is going to come up, and just in a couple of words, 2 or 3 words, what did you hear tonight that surprised you the most? We want to hear from you on that Slido poll. Work and save. But I also want to hear from you, Jazinae. What surprised you the most that you heard tonight?
I would say more so the talk around Social Security. I remember my grandmother talking about that a little bit, but, ever since I went to college and, kind of got away from that, it hasn't been as much of the talk. So I don't know. It was just weird to hear that again and be like, oh, wow, I probably should start thinking about that again.
Pahoua, what surprised you the most tonight during our conversation?
I think, like Jazinae, I think the frequency of the questions we received about Social Security, I think that definitely underscored the importance of that topic and what's on people's mind. I would say the other surprise for me, and I think I just needed to be reminded, was that the things that the panelists have said, just start where you are. I think not so much a surprise, but a reminder that we may not be where we want to be, but I think to have a plan and start from where you are is always a good message to be repeated.
I like this one that came in. How much of the conversation is about what we need to do collectively, not just individually? Black women work the most, yet retire the poorest. That was absolutely surprising. And I'm so glad that Kenya brought that up. Inspired by Kenya's advice to pay yourself first. Marissa, what surprised you the most?
I definitely think the effect of the pandemic, right, and how it has truly shown the inequalities among generations, among the diverse populations we have, and how we need to address the systematic errors of the past and how we can set up our system for a great future.
Jazinae, you messed their heads up because they're saying surprise rent amounts that young people are paying. You have shocked them, Jazinae. You have shocked them.
Yes.
What surprised you the most, Kenya, about tonight's discussion?
I'm an optimistic person, and what surprised me the most or reminded me is just how much inspiration people need to know that they can, they will, they should, and that they can take control of these situations and create the realities they want. It ain't easy, but it's possible. And I'm just a person that likes to work in that energy while being grounded in reality. So that kind of just was a reminder to me and how much information we need to understand the tools out here and how to really build a good quality of life for ourselves. We're so inundated with all this stuff that we can't, get from up under it to really, and it affects our families, our lives, generations, our communities, and no matter across the spectrum. So that was something that really was very loud and clear to me from the audience questions and comments. And I love to everybody. We're going to make it together.
Yeah. Now, Matt and Kathy and Patsy and Kate, they and Aaron, they are watching, have been watching, and continue to watch on YouTube. As we had this conversation, they've been taking notes, they've been listening, they've been touched by the stories that we've shared. One sentence, if you ladies, before we wrap up quickly, had one sentence that you wanted to leave with Matt, that you wanted to leave with Patsy, that you wanted to leave with Aaron, when we talk about saving for the future across generations. Jazinae, Matt, Aaron, Patsy, Kathy, they are listening. What one sentence would you tell them?
Discipline is key, and don't be ashamed with where you're starting at. Where you want to be, that's your goal. So it just takes time. Continue to just work forward to it.
Pahoua?
I would say the same thing that Jazinae said. Start from where you are, create a habit. But I would also say there are so many resources out there that didn't exist when I was growing up, and you can find out whether it's an app that you want to use as your investment tool. There's just so many things out there. So I think give it a try, explore, and investigate.
Kenya?
For me, as a visionary, everything starts with the vision. What age, when do you want to retire? What does that look like for you? How much money you want to make? All of that. And start there and work backwards. And know that it's a marathon. So we spread along the way, make different, turns in the road. But overall, start with the end and work your way to that beginning.
Marissa?
I would say take it from a millennial. Social Security is going to be there for you and the systems will be there for you. It just means that we have to support them and add our current situations and evaluate where they are and where we want to take them.
Jazinae, Pahoua, Kenya, Marissa, you have absolutely blessed us all tonight with your openness, your honesty, your knowledge, your expertise, and most importantly, the fact that you cared enough to give us your time. You could have been anywhere, and you spent the evening trying to help us all figure out our finances so we can have a future. So thank you, ladies, so much for being here. And thank you, everybody on YouTube, everybody on Facebook, the folks who registered and signed up, and the folks who found this accidentally. This conversation does not stop here. The sponsors of this discussion, AARP Minnesota, Black Women's Wealth Alliance, Bridge Makers, and Youth Prize. They want to continue this discussion, and they are recruiting individuals to continue the conversation by participating in a focus group. You may have indicated interest in the focus group when you filled out the survey at the beginning. When we were just planning this thing, we sent out surveys and we asked you to get involved and to register. But if you just happened up on it and you were just looking and saw we were live, the survey link is there right below me. And I want you to log on and to be a part of the focus group. And we'll send you an event reminder in an email. If you did not indicate interest before, but you're interested now, please let us know in the post survey that will be emailed to you later this week. I am so grateful that AARP Minnesota and all of our sponsors trusted me with tonight's event. It has just been an honor and a pleasure to be here to host this. And I'm so glad that you all have joined us for this open and candid and honest discussion about saving money across generations. It is so surprising that the issues and concerns that I am having with finances, that, 70, 80, 90-year-old women who look like me are having those same concerns. And I'm hopeful that the messages that we got from Kenya and Jazinae and Pahoua and Marissa are helping us break down those barriers, shed some light, and start to build generational wealth for our families. Please don't forget about the opportunity to participate in our focus group. Make sure you take the survey so that we can know exactly how you felt about tonight's event. And also, we want to hear from you so that we can start planning future events. This thing is interactive, just like this survey. And so when we go off and we start patting ourselves on the back, we need your constructive criticism. We need your feedback so we can make it better, because we didn't come here to hear ourselves talk. We came here to help you tonight with your finances, help you tonight with your grandmother's finances, help you tonight with your teenagers' finances across generations from 8 to 80. It's never too early to start talking about financial literacy and saving for the future. Now, y'all saw us today and we were so pretty. We had our makeup on, but this didn't happen tonight without some very special people at AARP. Kate Schaefer's, the AARP volunteer state president, was so instrumental in making sure this happened. And we have to also thank our volunteer state president who helped with this planning. And Erin Parrish, the advocacy and outreach director, who this is her brainchild, and she just has a heart for helping people and wanting all of us to live better lives. Carla, the communications director, who is just amazing. Allie, the communications intern. Oh my God, she has raised the intern bar. I tell you that. If Lord have mercy, I did not do anything near what she did for tonight. She is amazing. Raina Meyer, the public policy intern, was amazing in getting the word out and making sure that everybody knew about this event. And Kathy McClear, the state director. These ladies have just done an amazing job putting this and all of the panels and workshops and programming together to help make Minnesota better, help make Minnesotans better. And so I just can't thank them enough for the work that they did to put on this event, to let people know about it ahead of time, and then the follow-up later, because there are going to be some questions. Matt had 3-4 questions. And so we know he's going to be asking more. And so we want to make that available. So be sure that you take the survey, that you log on, that you sign up, because we want to continue this conversation. On behalf of AARP, Bridge Makers, Youth Prize, and their staff, Thank you so much for being here, for participating, for interacting with us, for taking the Slido poll and taking the time to learn about saving across future generations. Have a great night.